come in here. So again, we just thank the wonderful people here to open up their doors and allow us an opportunity this evening to talk about the Future Ready Master's Facility Plan at Kettering City Schools. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Mindy McCarty-Stewart. I serve the Kettering City Schools in this community as the superintendent, and completing my 4th year here. My husband and I moved to Kettering when I was privileged to be offered this position. It has been a wonderful, warm welcome in Kettering, so much that my mom and dad have recently relocated to the area and bought a home here in Kettering, as well as my sister and her husband, who are also relocated. They were in Mason, Ohio, and they have moved here too. So I've really brought my family here, and they also. So thank you to the Kettering community for the very warm welcome to our family. So this is certainly a place we call home. I've been invited here to, on behalf of the school system, to talk about the facts and information around this bond issue, and also give you an opportunity to ask questions of me. There are some people in this audience who served on the steering committee originally when we went to look at the project and created this segmented plan that I'll talk to you about. And they also have kind of lived and walked this walk with the committee and the school. And I thank Jennifer Kane, a board member, who's here and has been actively involved in this process and planning phase. So I know Robbie's up there, so if you go ahead and advance the slide. Hi, Robbie. You have a hard copy of a presentation that is actually what we're going to use, that's sort of been just revised and refreshed for tomorrow night's community meeting, and I wanted to give you a hard copy. So it's not going to follow exactly with this, but a lot of the content will be the same, will be similar. It might look a little different. So I need to really start about the journey in this, is to talk about our current district. We have, these are the buildings that we use to educate our students currently. It shows you the years, and I think that tells a big picture in terms of the fact that besides Greenmont Elementary, every school building is 60 years or older. And our district and this community have supported and done a great job taking care of these facilities. But as you know, when something becomes in that 60-year on up range in terms of buildings, the ability and the cadence of what needs to be done to renovate and keep up and modernize and do those things becomes faster. We're outpacing our ability to really maintain these buildings. So that gives you a general picture of that. So next slide shows you the timeline, a segmented plan. So and I may go out of order a little bit, but I think it's important to tell the story of several years ago when we have the aging buildings and we're looking at our limited permanent improvement funds in terms of what we needed to do to start really replacing some of those big things that your roofs and your HVAC systems and your boiler systems and those types of things, and all of those buildings as they're aging pretty rapidly. And our maintenance department does a great job keeping up with the work orders and the significant work orders. We knew we needed to come up with a really long-term plan on how we were going to maintain our buildings and what we were going to do looking into the future. So we put together a steering committee after we had the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission come in and assess all of our buildings. Those are the experts. So if you are paying state taxes, you pay into what is called the OFCC. All that money goes and funds the OFCC program, and they will come and assess the buildings. And we got all of the results, and I'll walk you through that in a moment. But we knew the significant needs of our building, so we created this segmented timeline, which is also on your resource paper. So on the next slide, we're going to talk about that segment 1, and that is what the bond issue is addressing currently. And with that is our focus will be a new middle school. because our biggest needs in terms of the facilities and the structure, we have too much square footage currently with Kettering Middle School and Van Buren Middle School that is really needed. We're over the amount of square footage, so we're operating and maintaining both of those buildings where we can put them into one building. And so that became our priority area immediately when we looked at the assessments and we worked with our committee and thought it best to put that next to Fairmont High School. So we did a lot of work around assessing, putting that in that location, and I'll talk to you a little bit about all of the advantages in terms of programming and for students why that area was selected. And in that first segment, then we'll also look at the high school academic wing. And of those of you who attended Fairmont High School, the current Fairmont High School, you know the east, west, and central wings, and they're very long one-story wings. They have not been really renovated. They've been well taken care of. And so we're going to focus in on replacing that area and kind of creating a little bit more square footage for that and building that up. Instead of like 3 long areas, we'll probably do a 2 to 3 story building of the new academic wing, because there have been a lot of our areas around that high school campus that are in really great shape. And then with that, with the location of where we've selected to put the new middle school, we're going to have to relocate some of the outdoor facility practice areas, and that will go kind of in where the Van Buren Middle School currently sits. And then we certainly need, in terms of a budget, to make sure that we have the funds to keep our elementaries, continue to keep them warm, safe, and dry as we go into segment 2. So next slide. This is a rendering, and I think there's a really small picture in one of your handouts on this, but this is conceptually what this could look like in this campus area. What you see in blue is everything currently as it exists today. That's Fairmont High School. The new cosmetology area that's kind of there in the back. The red box that you see in there is that new high school academic area where they would have extended a little further out. We can move it closer to the existing building, bring that in and build that up new. And then the orange is conceptually then where the amount of square footage we would need to house all our kids in grades 6th, 7th, and 8th grade would be located in that area. We haven't designed exactly what all of that looks like. We just know that there's enough square footage to put it in this campus and be able to have them separately. And the advantage we have about 800 students that currently take high school credit while they're in middle school, which is great. And so we know there's a lot of sharing of resources as well as some of the other facility programs, the career tech lab spaces and the technology and some of those advantages. We are able to really share those amazing resources by being in that one location, but still yet separate. We would still have the middle school starting at middle school time and the high school starting at the high school time. So there still would be that over-hour gap between the start and end times. We did a lot of work with the city of Kettering. We hired Kleinger's, an engineering company, to really assess the traffic flow patterns. They assessed what's happening at our current Kettering Middle School and Van Buren, and then currently what's around this area. We did a lot of feedback sessions and input from community that live and especially and drive and are in that vicinity. Were able to give us some input. So we have an opportunity, probably not making anything perfect, but certainly an opportunity to improve the traffic flow patterns around there and make some things even safer. So one of the things that's hard to see in that visual is that we have an opportunity to have our bus transportation moving in and out completely separate from any other traffic. We have increased the amount of access points that parents can do drop-off zones, both middle school and high school. Again, they're not coming all at the same time, but they're limited into how they can get into the buildings, where we will open those up to have some flow of traffic that I believe will be an improvement for the traffic buildup on Far Hills and on Schroyer and around that area. And so I really appreciate the collaboration efforts on with the people involved in that process. So if we move to the next slide. So one of these next slides often have kind of been derived from a lot of our frequently asked questions as we've been over the last year really engaging in our community. This is the budget management strategy, and we're often asked, what's planned right now with the OFCC is, I'm going to kind of probably jump ahead because I'm not used to where the slides are in location. So the OFCC, I want to talk a little bit more about that project, and then that will help us understand that budget management strategy. So part of their program is they assess in each community based on a formula. The OFCC comes in and says, you are at a certain level to receive this percentage of funding from the state to match the project. And we are currently the state for a renovation project for this. They are going to match that at 43% cost. And it's based on, again, their assessment and on the community's needs. That number is significantly higher than it was probably 10, 12 years ago. So it's a really good opportunity right now to be at a 43%. There's some caveats to partnering with the OFCC when it comes to this. Their assessments are based on, they do a ratio, and I think that's definitely in that packet that will explain that a little bit more, the ratios. If it's over 66% of a renovation project where you'd be able to kind of keep the building and then have it renovated, to the cost ratio to build new. Well, going back to that slide previously, all the assessed buildings came out as higher than the 66%, which basically meant that they're saying, we will partner with you, but they have to be new buildings, all but one, and that was Greenmont Elementary, our building that is at 21. They will help partner with us to do some renovations at Greenmont Elementary, but the caveat is, if you want to partner with them, it has to be new builds. So we get that question a lot. And there are some things within the OFCC design that you do have to partner with them because they have certain expectations. They want equity in the work that they do, and they have standards too. They've been around for a very long time in terms of square footage and making sure that it is the instructional space and the services and programs that we know we're required to provide for our students are matched. And the difference with the high school, because of all the new renovations and new buildings around the high school, the academic wing being the area that we would completely build new, is based on a waiver that we're eligible for because of the additions and the newer buildings built around that. So I want to kind of keep that in your mind, as in terms of why now is a good time. It's an opportunity with that co-funded project with the state, and they will expedite that as our number is coming up to receive that reimbursement of the 43%. And we say that is an opportunity. The need is there. We know the need is there, and here's the opportunity to co-fund that with the state. If we're unable to raise the additional money to fund this project, at some point we have a certain limited amount of time to do that, and then they will move on, and you kind of go to the bottom of the list, and then that money that we pay in to this project goes to another school district that's ready to partner with the OFCC. So some things in terms of when you get into the point where you can be successful to move forward with this. Your project budget is based on current construction pricing from similar projects. So we've been working with Mike Richley of Richley Architects as a consultant throughout this project, and we have OFCC consultants throughout this project and similar projects. So we've put in the budget to consider the current cost And we do add in some inflation with that, so cost estimates will be prepared at key points during the design process. The budget includes an owner-held contingency, and we will hire a construction manager-held contingency. These things are protected to say those are our safety thresholds to make sure that the money that we raise, the project that we've budgeted for, comes in within budget. So in the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about segment 2. That's estimated to start around 2028. That part then brings us to creating 4 new elementaries and renovate Greenmont. So we currently have 8 elementaries. So this plan takes us from 8 to 5. And then we'll go back in and do some remodeling and updates to our high school cafeteria and some of those career tech classrooms that are not newer but just need some updates. And so then that would be in segment 2, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in detail. But if we go into the next slide. Often a frequently asked question is the location of the 4 new elementaries. We're asked, well, where are those going to be? And we did a lot of discussion around this and determined our focus needs to be on all the detail work when it comes to segment 1 first. And here's why. There's a few points into those locations of the 4 new elementaries. They are going to exist on on any of our current property. So we're in the advantage of we don't need to purchase or add any additional budget money to property. So we know that those 4 new we know where Greenmont's going to be. It's going to stay exactly where it's at. It's going to get renovated. And then we'll add 4 to that area in any of our current locations. We know we want to keep our neighborhood schools. And when we say neighborhood schools, that means either your K through 5. It makes them a little bit bigger, but that also adds more cost operational efficiencies to the district in the long term to operate 5 elementaries versus 8. It puts them at a decent size. The other caveat to that, that's good practice, and we believe that it really is a way to be fiscally responsible for the district and operating costs long term. The OFCC will not renovate or replace a building with less than 350 students in the building. We have at least 2 buildings currently that run under that 350, and then some that are larger. So there's some inconsistencies in there too, which makes it sometimes very difficult to keep your class sizes balanced and really maximize your personnel and your staff and your educators. So that's kind of where you get into that cost savings. And going to from the 8 to 5 allows us to do that and also stay within the state model for partnering with the OFCC. And then we want to make sure that we're spending time and we're focused in on doing traffic studies and accessibility to what are the best 4 locations. Once we know geographically, we don't want to cluster 4 in close proximity to Greenmount because that takes away too much of the neighborhood feel. So we want to think about it geographically. Then we start looking at that traffic safety, accessibility piece of it, the site suitability. So we'll bring in experts to help us analyze. We'll engage in our community with that. What is the design flexibility? Drainage utilities, what's the best area to maximize where those would be? Diving in that too early, we don't want to rush that decision as well. And we also want to spend some time talking about where we want to make sure we're housing our preschool. So there's some options and flexibility and opportunities for our district moving forward. So next slide. The other question is, because then you have potentially some vacant either buildings or lots, and we've talked about what is that future property use that will be part of that deep dive into that research. So once we know which areas that we're going to build on, we look at our remaining areas, and we make sure that we hire and research, or with consultation with our architects, our city managers, legal counsel, and community engagement, and follow all Ohio Revised Code to make some decisions in what's in the best interest of the district moving forward. There could be opportunity there for that, but we want to make sure that once we have the information and know exactly what it is we need that's going to best suit the students and the long-term plan of where those locations will be, that we will put together a future property use plan. The next slide. So just in terms, I've talked a little bit about this, but when you consolidate our buildings, I mean, we are in a nice place. We're a mature community. Kettering has certainly experienced major growth pockets. I think we were at one point at the peak. We had 13 buildings right now. We had over like 22, 23, I think is the number. I can't remember exactly which one it was. And we've also, part of the OFCC is they work with a third-party expert firm that comes and does an extensive enrollment project, because they don't want you to plan out, and they don't want to partner in building up a project that is either you are either going to decline in growth or you're going to significantly grow in growth. We're going to decline a little bit in the next 10 or so years, which is very consistent to where we're at, which is a really nice, healthy place for Kettering and serving the Kettering community. So we have an opportunity now to right-size our buildings and that space. And with that brings, there's a list of just different things, as you know, and I'm sure the people here at Good Shepherd know the cost to keep the lights on and the air conditioning running and the landscape and all of the things that happen. And we've so there again is an operational cost that over the years can be really important for the stability of the school district. So on the next slide. One thing, and it says in segment 2, but this is also in segment 1, is personnel considerations. Throughout this process, we have committed to no one loses a job in any of the consolidations or even in our current middle school merger program. We are large enough that we experience through attrition, through retirements, normal. We're a destination district. In a job market where not as many people are going into education, and workforce positions are very difficult to fill. And I would even say that is to be true. Like, we know we have good people that really want to work in Kettering, and we will continue to do that. But even with that, there's always movement. So even though we've currently, with the merger to our 2 middle schools, and we're able to not replace some of those positions, we still are going to have to post and hire positions. And so we've looked at the trend on that, and we know that we want to maintain that quality service of those programs. We are one of very few districts in the state of Ohio who offers an advanced placement program at the high school and an international baccalaureate program at the high school, which now is actually going to have a career tech international baccalaureate elective, as well as your career tech, as well as being able to get college credit plus, where students can earn college credit before they leave high school. We have such wonderful, robust opportunities, and we don't want to lose that. We've really expanded those exploratory programs and electives for kids in middle school, because we know that's critical for them as they're figuring out their career pathways. And so we want to make sure we do that. We know another thing that has certainly come true through this process and being here is not only to our internal stakeholders, but also to communities, class sizes are really important. And so we've really done a lot of research in terms of different grade levels and class sizes, and we will continue to be able to balance those out across every building. So next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about the financial plan. And again, you have a one-page handout that kind of helps you with this, as well as it's in your packet. So the first slide, I've talked a little bit about this. Very hard to read from there, but you should be able to access this. So that first segment for the bond issue is that millage. What we've done is we've taken the home value and put to the monthly cost of what that would do to help fund the first phase, the segmented one area. So if we'll go on to the next slide. This gives you, this slide here, breaks out segment 1 and then looks at segment 2. When we will get our state credit back for segment 1, we will be able to fund the other 4 new elementaries, and that's the cost there, and I think that's calculated out to estimate to 2.67 mils. So what we have, if all goes according to plan, the current bond issues that we have, I believe since 2022-21, that gets paid off. And as that gets paid off, that amount will roll off by the time we get to segment 2. So what we anticipate is when we're ready to go out to segment 2, that 2.67 mils will be a no increase to our taxpayers here in Kettering. And there's some more details in that, but I wanted to kind of walk you through that and certainly can answer some questions as it relates to the finances of the bond issue. Next slide. This is a visual of the blue pie chart shows what the local share would be with what then the OFCC share would be. And again, that's the partner, because I'm often asked, what happens if the bond issue does not pass? The gray area shows over the next 10 years, there's some significant needs to renovate and get our buildings and keep our buildings up to standard and continue to keep them warm, safe, and dry. That money has to come from somewhere. And I have often said, if we had a different option outside of asking for tax dollars, other than this state partnership, there are no other options. What will happen is eventually, and it's kind of the fork in the road, is our operating costs, that those daily costs, a lot of that goes toward your benefits and salaries to run a district this size, to keep the programs vibrant and moving forward, which Kettering is very known for. We end up taking from that general fund when we need roofs fixed and chillers fixed and HVAC and all of those things. So it comes from somewhere. And I wish that we had a different solution that would not have to create a bond issue to help us get to this point. But we have to do something about our buildings and our facilities. I often tell to our team all the time, what are the things that keep us from having school? You know, snow, other things, but you know, when when our buildings are depreciating, we're having issues, we have to take care of that so that we can educate our students. I'm also a firm believer in that it's really the people. You know that, you probably know that if you've connected well to some of our amazing educators and drivers and food service people and all the people it takes to operate these buildings, and some of you probably maybe have neighbors and family that do work for the district. It's the people that make a difference, is more so than the brick and mortar, but the brick and mortar is a very important to the operational part of what we do in education. So there's a different kind of way to look at that. And then in the next slide, I talked about that facilities fork in the road. There's a lot of words on this slide, but my best way, as not the treasurer, is to explain this as that is a question we're often getting, and we're having to make some really tough decisions when we know that our permanent improvement funds, that is what we have each year to cover when we know, parking lots need to get paved or we need a new bus. Anything that has a lifespan of 5 years or more can be pulled out of that permanent improvement. I can't pay for salaries and benefits and things like that from that, but we're outpacing that, and we're in that that fork in the road where we're starting to pull more and more out of that general fund. And 4 years ago, I was honored to accept this position, but also told, hey, we need an operating levy. And Kettering passed it, and we heard and we listened, and our board has challenged me and my team is we've been an operating levy every 3 years, kind of that just-in-time cadence with our operating levy. We are in a healthy place where we said we are going to figure out how to stretch this, because our community said, this has been hard on us, but we're going to support this. And what we're doing looks good. We've stretched a 3-year to at least about a 6-year. So we've met that challenge. The problem is now our facility needs are going to interfere with that work that we're doing. So we've got to spend up front to improve our facilities so that we can maintain some operational efficiencies for long term. Next slide. I think I talked a lot about this. Usually this is our treasurers here. We'll move beyond this one, and we can kind of come back to if you have additional questions on that. So we'll go ahead, Robbie, to the next slide. The Barnes project, that is often a question if you're not familiar with the Barnes project. So that was another kind of a fun task and project is, hey, you're hired here. We've got this building. We had to vacate it because it, at that point, was only housing your administrative offices, your treasurer's department, your human resource department, your curriculum, your district people. But it was significantly deteriorating, and the cost to renovate that for the amount of square footage we needed exceeded what we were not going to go to our taxpayers and say, hey, we've got to fund it. The amount of square footage to build new was more of an efficient way to look at that than renovating an older building. And for those of you who've ever done any kind of projects, even small scale, you probably understand the complexities of that. So the district really had to pivot and come up with a plan. And so we've been leasing space at Lincoln Park, and that lease will be up in 2028. And the Barnes building was going to be demoed because it was the most cost-efficient, fiscally responsible thing as a Board of Education in a district to do, and because we didn't need it for educational space, and that's what we do. So when we started to roll that plan out, the Shivitz Foundation, which is a nonprofit foundation who is in the business to renovate older buildings and just kind of preserve that. That's a passion that they have with also entrepreneurship, the spirit of being entrepreneurs. And so they approached us and say, hey, what can we do to help you not tear this building down? And I said, well, we're not going to spend any taxpayer money or district funds or general fund to save the building. We don't need it educationally for students. They said, well, let's work on this together. Like, we would like to try to preserve this. But they needed to find a partner that would want to program it. And they found Cohatch. If you're familiar with Cohatch, it's a unique thing. Now that we've talked about it here, you might actually see them in different locations. It's a private profit company that actually likes to find older buildings and abandoned places and create kind of office space and collaborative space for like startup companies or people that maybe are working remotely, because one of the hardest things in any kind of startup for people and businesses is the overhead. And so it's kind of this organization. You can have space there, but it also is connected to community. So we worked with them and the board and said there are certain things it needs to align to our mission, our core values of a public education entity, and be a good partner with us, and that no money would be spent on any of the renovation. And so they are We have a plan moving forward. They will renovate the entire building. They will renovate this office space part for us once we are out of our lease. So there's also a little bit of cost savings and a win-win for the school district, as well as maybe an opportunity for just to enrich the environment. And so we're excited about that project. And again, Justin, our treasurer, loves for me to make sure I say no district funds used for renovation and no taxes raised for these renovations. That's the Barnes story. And that is completely outside of this facility plan. The OFCC does not co-fund any administrative office space or field space. That has to be all locally funded. All right, moving on to the next slide. Middle school merger. Are any of you, if you're brave enough just to say maybe I have a child or a grandchild impacted on the middle school merger? Okay, I've referenced it a little bit. Van Buren Middle School was, and you can go, Robbie, if you could go to the next slide. To address the critical needs, like we have repaired that roof over and over again. To even the company has said, you have to put a new roof on it. There's no repair patchwork that can continue to sustain it beyond really getting us through this current school year. And then you're going to need to reinforce the outer structure to support the weight of the roof because of the way the building is and how the age of the building. So that alone is just going to be about $2.8 million. That is more than our permanent improvement fund. So that would completely wipe out just our permanent improvement funds for any other fixtures and needs for buildings for the district for the year. So we knew that was an issue. We knew from the OFCC assessment that they kept saying you have 41% too much square footage in both of your middle schools for your total 6th, 7th, and 8th grade enrollment. And that's for generations to come. Which kind of blew our mind because those buildings really aren't designed for the way we educate today, but if we could design them for the way they educate today, we can fit. And so we kept thinking, okay, we have this need. Could we really truly fit all our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders and still do the level of programming, still knowing that there's some significant needs at KMS that have to get addressed because it also needs to be completely replaced. But for a brief period of time, can we get them all together? And so that we're not spending $2.8 million on a building that needs to come down. And we did a lot of extensive research and were able to determine that, yes, we can make this happen. And if you go to the next slide, in addition to that, it cost about $989,000 just to operate that building, to keep it open and running. Even if you don't do any improvements to it, just the normal operating, the lights, the air conditioning, those types of things. So even if we look at our segmented plan, we need that KMS and we need that building for the next 5 years. That's another $4.9 million on top of that 2.8 that we could save over time. And we could redivert those funds elsewhere. So that is kind of a picture. That was, certainly the timing wasn't great as we're trying to focus on the segmented plan, but I also go, the data's there, the need is there. We're going to dive in, we're going to do the hard work, and our teams have done, and they've really gotten together and created stakeholder committees to be better together as one school. And we have found all the those hidden things that are such a benefit. Our kids are probably more excited. Our adults might be a little bit nervous, but we're coming together, and it's going to be better together. So next slide. That kind of gets us to the end of that, together we soar, one district, one vision, one Firebird community. It's neat to be able to actually bring our 6th through 8th graders together as we go to design a new middle school. We're going to learn and know a lot more versus us trying to come together into a new middle school. And I believe if you go to the next slide, Those are all the different committee groups. So what we've learned is this system worked really well. So when we start to do that and come together for our consolidation of our elementaries, we want to keep the same format. You know, we had a student connection group. We have student voices on this. We have parent voices on this. We have community leader voices in this, and staff and administrators. And those are all the different committees, and they would come together each month and then report out and get feedback in terms of what that would be. And so I share that too because it's going to be very relevant as we move forward in this 10-year plan. And if you're familiar with what are those attributes of a portrait of a Firebird, of what we want our students to leave us being able to be, you know, problem solvers and lifelong learners and collaborators and thoughtful communicators, and this is certainly, we have mirrored this in this process. So next slide. This is just, we often, when we get together with our staff, with our instructional council, we often are saying, where do you see future-ready skill sets reflected in the portrait of Firebird? And so we really just like that visual there. And then if you go to the next slide, we've done a lot of research around design features that support, you know, what our students need. And again, I said, you know, like hiring the highest quality, most committed, dedicated, caring people to be with your students, with your children, with your grandchildren, your neighbors each and every day makes this community what it is. And we also know, though, that they also, the buildings and the facilities that they spend this time in need to reflect that as well. I use the example, too, is ADA for the American for Disabilities Act. We've had to retrofit a lot of older aging buildings to make sure that we are inclusive to students and staff and families and people that come in and use our facilities. But designing this and today in 21st century with this, that's one example of an opportunity to be even better, the Kettering way, to being able to do that. And then the following slide, that is a picture of Van Buren Middle School. It is, again, our teachers, our educators, our paraprofessionals, people do an amazing job and get really creative in how education looks today in facilities that are built. And you can see they're in a lot of collaborative, but they are, I mean, you are stepping over them. They are huddled together all day long, cooperating, learning, and the things that we could do. And if you go to the next slide, Robbie. This is just an example of a flexible learning environment where you can see where they have space to independently work, they have space to work collaboratively and then they have like space to create and explore. There's nice natural lighting that's designed in this space. Being able to take all the amazing things that our educators do and want to do every day for our kids, being able to put them in there has a research-based effect on our kiddos. And then that's another example of collaboration space, maximizing unused spaces. We have a lot of unused space, not real functional spaces in these older buildings. And so our design teams can really create really neat opportunities for our students. And then the following slide, you can't see these as well, but these are pictures of Fairborn High School and West Carrollton. And I don't know if any of you have been in there, and if you look at these are pretty amazing new designs. These are OSCC partners right in our neighborhoods in new builds that we have gone to visit. We're constantly looking for lessons learned. What did you like? What worked well? And they have, again, our neighbors that we know. We compete, and we want our families to stay here. We want this continuing to be a destination district, and these are pretty amazing learning spaces, an educational environment for kids. Those are our neighbors. All right. You don't have the QR code, so don't try to. This is an older one, so that's a lot of information, and it's hard for me from here. They're live streaming. Thank you for doing that. So I needed to make sure I stayed in the light here to make sure that happened. but I'm trying to also, I like reading facial expressions, and I also just want to engage questions or comments or anything that you might have that you would like to bring to our attention or ask me. Yeah, Mike? Mike, do you want the microphone?
Usually I don't need it, but stand in the light. Mike Zwain originally came here in 1989 with the U.S. Air Force, and I had assignments in and out of Ohio over my career. But every time I got a chance to come back to Kettering, I always came back to Kettering. It was the best place for my kids. It was the best place for my family, best place for me, and it still is. It's the best place in this area to live. A lot of that has to do with the schools. And as Mindy has very articulately put it, the schools need work. I mean, I'm in those buildings a lot. I work with the Dorwood Optimist Club, and we do a lot of work in the schools, helping out with various projects, volunteer work and money and things like that. We get to see the kids, we get to see the buildings, get to see the staff at work. This project is a big deal. It's a lot of money. It's the way I look at it, it's a 37-year mortgage that the taxpayers have to pay. And my share of it, you know, I know what my share of it is going to be. And I believe it's absolutely worth it. A couple of reasons for that. I work with a program called the College Promise Program. This is working with underprivileged kids who could never afford to go to college. The College Promise Program makes it possible and finances them to be able to go to college. I'm working with a kid in the Dayton public school system, guiding him through the process and trying to get him to the point where he can qualify for college. He has a 4.3 grade point average. He got a 700 on his math score in SATs. If he was in the Fairmont system, this kid would not be a 4.3. I interact with grade point average students in the Kettering system, and those kids will go to the best schools in the country. My kid is going to be lucky to go to Sinclair Community College to qualify for programs that they have. He may get accepted to other better schools, but his test scores and his real abilities is nowhere near what he would be if he was in the Fairmont system. Bottom line, this school system got both of my kids through school. They are doing extremely well. I love how the schools foster that community spirit and make Kettering what it is. The city of Kettering would not be what Kettering is without the school system. So, yes, you know, we're being asked to share a piece of that big mortgage that the schools need, but to me, it's absolutely worth it. It's a responsibility for me. And the fact that the state will pick up 43% of the cost, that's a huge opportunity that I see. If we don't take advantage of it, that opportunity, like Mindy says, we go to the bottom of the list and some other school will get the benefit of that. So from my perspective, this is a must-do.
Thanks, Mike, for sharing that. Always when I hear Mike's story, and thank you for being part of College Promise, what I also love about Kettering is we can take students and meet them where they're at and get them to we have a very open mindset in terms of what they can do and perform. So we can get students that can go and get into select colleges and programs and high demand academics. I'm also very proud of when we work with students who may be first generation to apply or go to a college or go to a two-year program or be close to getting their associate's degree or earning a major living wage from a very lucrative career. And so what our educators and what they get are they really meet kids where they're at and take them to the next level in terms of their interest and aptitude and helping them discover that. So thanks, Mike, for sharing your thoughts and questions. I think, yeah.
I'd like to do what Mike did. My name is Bob Scott. I was born and raised in Kettering. I started in Kettering schools in the fall of 1963 at an elementary school that doesn't even exist anymore. And my older sister went through the school system. My two children went through the school system. I had a niece and nephew go through the school system. So I have a vested interest in Kettering schools. If it wasn't for a program I was in my senior year at Fairmont West, it put me on my career path. I'm not a college grad. What I got through Fairmont ended up being my life's work. Okay, so having said, I'm a big proponent of the schools, but I'm also fiscally concerned. So a couple of questions. You probably need to have the mic back because you got to respond to everybody. First, I have multiple questions. First one, if we knew Van Buren had the major money hemorrhaging problems that it does, why did we not combine it with KMS sooner, is one, okay? Two, if the levy goes through and your plan takes full shape when it's completed, you mentioned through attrition, the head count will be down, which makes perfect sense. School population is going to be down. We don't have as many students as we did. When I went through, we had 14,000 students. We have essentially half of that now. What is the projected head count of staff and teacher to pupil ratio at the end of this program? What might the perceived savings be to the labor cost budget for the school system? Because I think most citizens would want to know that. Okay, it's a common sense question. And then the cost estimates, okay, I don't know of a public works project that comes in under budget that's 10 years long. What are we going to do if there's cost overruns? You have to go back to the citizens for additional levy. And then lastly, because we're a landlocked city, land is extremely valuable in Kettering. The market value of 3x elementary school properties is going to be significant. I think your average citizen would like to know more than just maybe we'll look at it when the plan's done. Here's the market value of the elementary school properties, and let's say it averages $2 million, just to pick a number. So we'll have 3 of them that'll be available at an average of $2 million. What can be done with that in a sale, okay, for the school system to get money? In addition, how specifically can we work with the city to get the best bang for our buck on that land?
All right, so I'm going to do my best to kind of walk through some of the questions that you had. It's all right. I think I can track, and I might not give you perfect answers to your question that satisfy what you need tonight, but I'll do my level best. So Van Buren, we were dealing with what we know in that time that we knew it, and part of that 2 years ago, having the foresight and the board having the foresight to work with me to doing the assessment helped us bring in experts that could really start to analyze the square footage and the needs and the necessity. So I feel like it is, the timing is perfect. I would say that you were asking a district in the middle of probably COVID and a lot of other things to look at something of that magnitude, which I think would have been very difficult at that time. And I think what we're learning is what is the rapid pace of what happens to buildings and the roofs and the things of that nature. So I believe we're acting judiciously in what we know right now. And it took a lot of work for us to make sure that we could fit and come up with a feasible plan to make this transition. And it's a big lift. It's been a very heavy lift. So I think the timing of it is really well, because I don't have that crystal ball. Because that's the thing that, I'll be honest with you, makes me a little bit nervous is I'm just going to say, as a superintendent, I'm not going to be kept overnight to go one more year into, or one more year again. As when's that next heavy rain? What is that going to be? That one thing that we sometimes we can't predict that. And what's going to happen, what else is happening around the district. So I think the timing is right. We're ready. We had the team ready to make that transition. I think it's working out well. It hasn't been easy. It's been very difficult. We look at those things. I think where we're at, fiscally and financially, is giving us permission to do those things, and a board that supports that. And so that's how we're moving forward. in terms of, I talked a little bit about the budget, because you said construction projects can oftentimes go over budget. I feel very confident in as much as we were able to do, looking at real-time costs, putting inflationary costs, because the other thing you get in is we also don't want to ask for more than what we need, because that's also a disservice to the community. But when you hire a construction manager at risk, which is something that we'll start to do here soon, gives you that protection in terms of they're now responsible for saying and getting the project within budget. We've had the fortune of recent projects that have happened that we know what those costs are, and so those are the protections that we're doing moving forward. In terms of the land, it isn't a, well, we may do that. It is, we will absolutely do a cost benefit analysis of what is able to do. There's so many nuances to, in terms of the Ohio Revised Code, to what land we select, to what it is. And I can't sit here and say right now, but I knew the market value at one point. I could run that off my head in terms of the market value of what Van Buren Barnes was. It won't make a dent in millage, but it's going to help a little bit. It's paired with, so selling off property and doing these types of things, as much as people might think, oh, that's gonna make this kind of significant amount to take off millage. What it's going to do is it's going to help us continue to stretch that operating cost, because it's paired with every year when we have enrollment and we have like a first grade class that might be smaller than the second or third, and those numbers run through, and then we run and we look at how do we balance those class sizes. I'm kind of going to pick on Aaron Smith as an elementary principal. He knows he has to sit down and do this with us every year, and we've been right-sizing, saying, you know what, nope, we don't need this many teachers or this many paras or this in this grade, and it fluctuates because we are building to the 7,500 students we currently have. We'll decline about what we're predicted to, about 300. Where those 300 fall is where we look at it every year and say, here's our class sizes. We run the mock schedules and we determine here's what positions we're going to replace, or what some of the programs that have kind of phased out. Usually at your high school level, we do those things. Trying to give you a number of that prediction as taking minus 300, you can't do that now, because I don't know if it's going to be 300 kids less in 10 years that are going to be elementary level, or it's going to come in waves, and so I can't put an exact price tag on it. I just know that that consolidation, kind of like what we're doing in Van Buren and KMS, is going to give us some savings. Paired with everything that we're going to do, helps us with that our 5-year forecast that is publicly out there. That's what we're always looking is that, can that 5-year forecast push out the next operating levy? Can we stretch that? And we have to do that. Meanwhile, what the state funds us in Ohio and what the state is doing, because is we are woefully underfunded compared to other states for public education. And there's a fair funding formula that is not fair, that is still unconstitutional. So every time that I'm told, hey, project this out and tell us what we're going to save, we're at the mercy of what the state funding formula is going to do too, and we're chasing that, and that's as obscure and unpredictable as anything else. So there are so many nuances, and we put in those things into the 5-year forecast. And as we get closer to this segmented 2 plan, because people could say, I don't necessarily like your segment 2. I'm not going to support that segmented part. When you have that information, that is again what I love about the public education system is you have that right to do that, and you'll have more information. You're going to have information as to where they're going to be built, what the district's going to do with the property, the vacant property. What are those needs? How does that help financially the district with some stability? Here's where we're at with the state funding, because this could change too in terms of if the state continues to take their funding and spend it toward vouchers. That could be more damaging, and we have to go deeper. We don't know those things, but our 5-year forecast will help us with that. And so every year as we get closer to that 5-year forecast is going to help us show that picture for the board to operate, for the district to operate, and for the community to understand it. So it's really hard for us to say. And then we're always at the mercy of, well, what new mandate is going to come in the middle of this that we have to make sure we're following and we're adhering to. So I don't know if I touched on all of yours, but I can't give you an exact estimate. I know before we get to a segment 2 bond issue, we will have the details of that information in real time as we can possibly get. Yeah. Right. Sure. Mm-hmm. 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 And again, when in 2000 we were dealing with what we knew best in that 2000 era. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, hold on a second. What I want to do is I do appreciate you, and I appreciate that. I know that you support education and you love Kettering and you do a lot for Kettering, and I get that, and I know that you're financially conservative with this, and I would like to say I'd like to see myself as another person who's financially conservative, because I have come into this district and we've made tough decisions where we are doing one of the bigger tough decisions that this district, and wasn't real popular for a minute with the merger. So what I can say is I can't give you an exact number, but you can know that we are profoundly looking for those efficiencies that we can get without deteriorating what makes Kettering Kettering. And there's a fine balance to that, because I know that that is not what our community wants us to. Because we could come in and you could slash and you could create significant savings. We're not riffing, we're not cutting programs that are still relevant and vibrant for our kids, but we are creating those efficiencies, and this is one step, what is needed right now in the present. And then in terms of staffing, we can say, when we know that we will find efficiencies when we do consolidate, I just can't tell you when our head count of our 7,500 kids, that could be 7,200 or 7,300. I just don't know where those at. The staffing needs for kindergarten classrooms is significantly different than a middle school or putting together a high school master plan. Those are different. I mean, if you said if I were only educating kids in K-1-2, I probably could give you a more estimate number. But that's taking your enrollment that fluctuates sometimes very differently over the 10 years, and from year to year, those bubbles. We have high ends, we have low enrollment. We jump, and those move throughout your building, your district. Sometimes there's unpredictability of some students come back to us later, like in their 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade year, 11th grade year, 12th grade year, and your enrollment jumps a little bit. So I want to be very thoughtful of everyone's time, and I usually stay within an hour because I feel like when I do that, you'll come back to other events. Unless anybody here maybe that hasn't had a chance to ask a question, I'll give you a chance.
Her question was simply, when you do tear down Van Buren, will there be an opportunity for families to get mementos from the school, like if they bought bricks, et cetera, that sort of thing? So I told her I would ask that.
That is a great question. So we have a legacy committee who is working on that. Tomorrow night from 5 to 6, you can do a personal tour. If you have a sentimental, we encourage you. We have a community forum that starts at 7, but from 5 to 6, anybody can come in from the community and do a personal tour. We are also planning something more like significant to kind of honor, memorialize, and celebrate. We're in the middle of major state testing, so they've said, let us get through testing before we do some other significant event. And we do have a group of people that are working on, and the bricks have come up multiple times, so our understanding is that would be an opportunity to do something that we want to give back and, and do something like that. I think the brick has been a very popular feedback that we've received. So more to come. Keep paying attention to either our district website or the city school Facebook page, and we'll announce. But if you again want to come back from 5 to 6, and I will pass along to that committee that the bricks continue to be a really popular idea. So thank you. Sure.
This is not a question. It's an historical perspective from someone who has lived here for all of his 80 years, basically. When Bob Scott started first grade, I was graduating from Fairmont High School. I just want folks to remember that people came to Van Buren Township because they had a vision for their families, for education, and for building a community. In the 1920s, late 20s, people said this new high school, which became the Barnes Building, is a folly in the country. And it turned out to be one of the premier high schools in this area. In the 1950s, there was a big plot of land that was available between Far Hills and Schroyer. People said, you don't need all of that land to build a high school. Every square inch of that property is being used now and will be used for this renovation. This city was founded on a vision for the future. This is our opportunity as citizens of Kettering. My parents moved to the middle of a cornfield because Van Buren Township had schools to offer, and I will be forever grateful to them for that decision. We have, as a community, the opportunity to have a vision for our kids' future. They did it for us. Citizens did it for us. We need to do it for our future and for our community. Our city council, Bob, you sit on that group, and I know you are dedicated to a vision for improving the life of our community. This is a step toward improving the life of our community for the long term. So I would ask everybody to have a vision for the future. I'm 80 years old. I'm still betting on the Kettering City Schools, and I'm willing to pay into part of that mortgage. I probably won't be here to pay it off, but we're going to put our bid in now.
Thank you. So that really concludes tonight. Thank you for being engaged and listening to just a lot of facts and information. you have in your packet, I did recognize, we showed you samples of a couple of different high school, or I think the high school may be Indian Riffle, what the breakdown in that audit showed from the OFCC. The full, each building, if you're curious and want to see what each building assessment looks like, it is on our district website. If you can't find it, email me. I'll make sure you get that. So again, thank you, and contact me anytime via email or call up, and if you have further questions that didn't get answered tonight or things that you want me to pass forward to our team. So thank you, and thank you to Good Shepherd Lutheran. You've been a wonderful host, and thank you for what you do for our community.